Have you decided what you're going to say?
We're going to start on Meghan.
I want you to know that the last time I did a performance like this, my pants fell down, so I put suspenders on today.
When I first started writing about the royal family, people would come up to me and say, do you know that Prince Philip has got a secret family at Sandringham? Or do you know he's got a secret family in Malta? Do you know he's got a secret family in Germany or in Melbourne? And on one occasion, I ended up looking at this gravestone at a place just outside Toronto, where this woman, I think her name was Millicent Martin or something like that, she said that she was the Duchess of Windsor's wife. And I asked around in the village and they said, oh yeah, she was definitely married to him. She also said that she won the Nobel Peace Prize for literature.
Oh, well, I'm glad you said that. Are we in the way here? Because people are going to be coming through. How are you? You look lovely.
You look
This is Paget.
Hello, Paget.
Very great supporter of the Rotary Cottage. Huge hand of applause, please, for Andrew Morton. Thank you all for coming today to our event celebrating this wonderful royal birth. This is a wonderful fundraiser for us, Bloom Where Planted. It's our foundation, of course, which we've had for years and years and years. And I have to tell you, 100% of the proceeds raised go today directly to our little children's education in our school in Loganor Primary School in Africa, because of the generosity of you wonderful Americans. And let me tell you something, I'm proud to live in this country, very proud, and very proud to be married to a wonderful lady called Mary Fry. To make this all possible, allow me to introduce, I've already done it, this wonderful gentleman, Mr. Andrew Morton. He's been seen all over the place on every single program, from The View to goodness knows what, worldwide.
Never one quite like this.
So the book we're going to start with actually is Meghan, Hollywood Princess. What did you call her? The
Billion Dollar Bride.
Billion Dollar Bride.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming along to support the Bloom Where Planted, and you all look wonderful in your hats and your fascinators, and I hope the conversation is as fascinating. This particular area, if the royal family had ley lines, Pasadena Avenue just out there would be a perfect royal ley line, because Meghan, as Edmund may have mentioned, has been here for tea about 6 times in order to learn how to take tea with the Queen. Remember, she had tea with the Queen back in November, just before the engagement. You remember how Prince Harry said that the stars were aligned when he first met Meghan? Well, in biographical terms, when the engagement was announced, the stars were aligned for me, because my wife, Carolyn, is from Pasadena. We live in Pasadena for part of the year, and Pasadena was basically Meghan Central. Not only did she have tea here, her old boyfriend, Louis Segura, sells houses just down the road. And he sold one literally opposite our house on San Rafael, our old house, just a few months before the engagement was announced. I remember somebody stopped me in the street and said, you must go see Edmund Fry, because he's had Meghan round for tea.
Dare I say something wrong? Oh, there's somebody here. Yeah. Meghan, come over here. Anyway. Thank you, Meghan. Doesn't she look beautiful? Turn around, let's see. Wonderful. Don't you think so?
She looks better than the real thing. Baby girl or boy? What's the betting so far? Girl.
Big hand of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
One of the interesting questions that I'm often asked is, will she last the course, and what will she have to change? What does a girl from Pasadena know about living with the royal family in Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace and so on? I think that she's taken to it like a duck to water. She's older than Diana was. Diana was 20. Diana found it very intimidating to go inside the royal family. So I remember Diana's friend Caroline Bartholomew. She went to Balmoral one year, and she was about to sit down in the drawing room, and the Queen Mother was then alive, and Princess Margaret was then alive. They kind of turned on her and said, "Don't sit there," and she kind of shot out out of the seat like she'd be like a scalded cat, and it was because it was Queen Mary's chair, that Queen Mary, the wife of George V, and nobody has sat in that chair since she died. At Sandringham, there's a jigsaw puzzle on the piano, and the Queen always puts in the last piece. Now, if Meghan, on her first visit to Sandringham, brightly told the assembled throng, "Oh, I've finished the jigsaw," well, very good. I would actually, on her report card, give her an A+, because she's hit the ground running, and as she said, she wanted to make a go of it, and she has done. And the fact that she's older, the fact that she's been a successful actress herself, has all helped in that process.
I remember you telling me a little story talking about rules and regulations. You were at Sandringham at one time, and you were outside the front door, and I think you were talking to the chief of security and said, where does that road go to? Can you tell us, can you elaborate on that little story?
And I was working for the Daily Mail, and I was just finishing off my duties for them. And I was showing a young photographer called Mike Forster around the Sandringham estate. Now, the Sandringham estate is where the Queen spends Christmas and the New Year. And her bodyguard is a chap called Jim Beaton. Now, Jim Beaton, some of you may recall, was the very brave policeman who was shot on the Mall when a deranged gunman tried to kidnap Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips. And he was given the George Medal for it, a George Cross for it. And he's a very nice guy, Scottish, dry humour, quite mischievous. I used to play squash with him, and he said to me, "Andrew, go down this private road. You might see something." And he said to me, "I didn't tell you to do it, but just go down there." So I had this blue Ford Escort car, and myself and the photographer went, and we ended up in this farmyard. And all of a sudden, riding over the hill, comes the Queen, Duchess of York, and Prince Edward. And they come and approach us. Fergie looks at me and gives me a knowing look, saying, "You're in big trouble." And the Queen kind of leans over like that and looks down on me, and I'm standing there. She said, "I hope you're proud of yourself, Mr. Morton." Now, it's all very well getting a cheap laugh like this, but when you've been bollocked by the Queen, you stay bollocked. I've always suspected that the reason why Diana asked me to write her biography was that she was back at Sandringham, and the conversation that night was about these appalling newspaper people who'd interfered with their afternoon. And I think that she thought, well, if Morton can irritate the Queen and Princess Anne, he can irritate Prince Charles as well. And so possibly why she asked me to write her biography.
Were you having an affair with Diane? We want to know right now.
Well, the curious thing about this whole operation was that I didn't meet Diana during the whole process of writing the book Diana, Her True Story. Because I'm 6'4", because I was a well-known royal writer, I wasn't. She said via an intermediary, a chap called Dr. James Colthurst, who was a friend of hers from when she was a bachelor girl living in Coleherne Court. She said to James, "Would Andrew like an interview?" She knew that I was writing her biography. She knew that I was sympathetic towards her. I'd written a number of stories which were, on side, but also well informed. And I thought she was going to give me something like, my humanitarian mission for the next 10 years, my charity prerogatives, and so on. I met James in a cafe in North Ruislip in London, and I put these headphones on and listened to Diana talking about her bulimia, never heard of it, Camilla Parker Bowles, never heard of her, cutting, the fact that she made these half-hearted suicide attempts, never heard of it. This, journalistically, was an astonishing experience, because we've all seen, or some of us may have seen, All the President's Men, with those scary scenes in the garage with Deep Throat, where the Robert Redford character comes running out and think he's going to be assassinated. Well, I heard that first tape, and it was like being admitted into a parallel universe. It's the only thing. You knew a secret that very few people knew about, so you were a danger. I got the first tape probably around March, April 1991, and we had a series of conversations.
One of the questions I have: if you'd written that book in the days of Henry VIII, would you have made it to the Tower alive, or would they have just chopped your head off right there?
Well, he would have been chopped off. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have been 5'6".
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, question. If the Queen had died while Charles and Diana were married, with a terrible three-way marriage, would Diana have been Queen, and could she have refused?
Well,
and would she have refused?
That's a very good question. I mean, as I mentioned just now, she always thought she would never become Queen. But if the Queen herself had died, she'd have been stuck, wouldn't she? She would have had to accept the position. Is Meghan difficult? Is she Duchess difficult? Well, I think alliteration plays a big part in that headline. But I forecast back in April, when just before the wedding, that it would go from sisters-in-law to sisters at war, and that's exactly what happened with Diana and Fergie and Diana in the early days of her marriage. And in a way, royal women are pitted against each other, first of all by fashion, because she wears that colour green better than that colour green, and so there's always that going on, but also the fact that they're different personalities from different cultures, had different backgrounds, so that's going to be used to make some kind of tension.
Well, what are you working on now, Andrew?
Well, right now I'm working on two books. One on the Queen,
right,
and then one on the Queen and Princess Margaret, which is and the stories about Princess Margaret even make me blush.
Thank you very much, Andrew Morton. Shall we do this again when he writes the next book? Shall we? Shall we invite him back?
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Andrew. This was very generous of you to give your time.
My pleasure.
And
enjoy your tea, enjoy the raffle, and enjoy some books. Whose is this one?
This is mine too. I just slipped it in there.
Lovely event. So wonderful experience with Andrew Morton and of course Edmund and Mary. It's a lovely place here.
Happy to be here, supporting our Kenyan students.
Yeah, I know. And Andrew Morton is just a fabulous
and
speaker.
Listening to Andrew Morton talk about an opportunity, great.
Yes.
And of course, Mary and Edmund makes for a perfect day.
Yeah.